1,000 demonstrators march in Baltimore for Freddie Gray in a student-led protest. Combating malaria in Nigeria. We'll have a report. And high-flying drones are taking the survey industry by storm. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight, in a new development, police in Baltimore, Maryland, have turned over the investigation into the death of 25-year-old Freddie Gray to state prosecutors one day early. Meanwhile, a massive student protest marched through the heart of the U.S. city on Wednesday evening. VOA's Victoria Markey reports from Baltimore.
Corey Johnson wants change from her government, and she wants action from her peers to make that happen.
We want to put pressure on the city to give us answers because this could have been us that this happened to. This literally happened 15 minutes away from our campus, 15 minutes away from our lives, and we pretend like it didn't.
More than 1,000 high school and college students marched behind her and other protest leaders in one of the largest demonstrations following the death of Freddie Gray. Alongside them, a man whose favorite baseball team, the Baltimore Orioles, played to an empty stadium Wednesday. Baseball officials banned spectators following post-game skirmishes earlier this week.
Closing a baseball game is not a good thing, but it's not what's really important right now. What's really important right now is remembering the death of Freddie Gray and trying to get this city where it needs to be.
Earlier in the day, a smaller crowd convened at the entrance to the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office. The police department will hand the Freddie Gray case over to that agency Friday to determine whether any police officers will face criminal charges. But not all activities were as vocal as the protests. The Baltimore Symphony Orchestra contributed with a free outdoor peace concert. It's a gesture organizers say shows the city is resilient and hopeful. Victoria Mackey, VOA News, Baltimore.
Well, more than a dozen people were arrested Wednesday night at a rally in New York City to protest the death of Freddie Gray. Several hundred protesters gathered in Manhattan's Union Square, chanting "No justice, no peace," and "Hands up, don't shoot," as police officers watched. Later, a group of protesters spilled into the street and disrupted traffic. The police moved in and began making arrests. Officers with batons had to push the crowd back into the sidewalk as a protester was being arrested and was led to a police van. People shouted, "The whole world is watching." Other demonstrations were held in Boston, Minneapolis, and Washington, D.C. Well, and back in Baltimore today is VOA reporter Victoria Mackey, who joins us live via Skype. Now, Victoria, has the tone of the city changed from yesterday?
It is still very peaceful here. There are a few more protests planned later this week, but we've definitely seen a big difference from minor skirmishes on Tuesday night. And the protests have really, turned quite calm and much more peaceful.
Now, what's happening, like in terms of how the city officials are engaging with the citizens? We know that the police have been kind of pulled back a little more, but what are some of the activities that are taking place to ensure that the city comes back to life?
It's really difficult right now because what we're seeing is the curfew is still in place at night from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. So it's really stifling a lot of businesses. That's what we've been hearing from business owners. There's still a bit of tension. There's a very, very heavy police and military presence throughout the street. So while it is peaceful, it's this uneasy peacefulness. We're trying to, I think people are trying to gauge really how long this is going to last, if it's going to last, and what they need to do to make it stay that way.
Now, are citizens calling for more demonstrations in the days to come?
There is the same group that organized the protest yesterday that was the biggest protest I've seen in a week of being covering Baltimore and what's been happening following the death of Freddie Gray. It was more than 1,000 students turned out yesterday. It was really, really massive, stretching several city blocks. That same group is organizing a protest for tomorrow afternoon, Friday, near the area where Freddie Gray was arrested. That's the biggest protest that we have on our radar right now.
What is the significance of the authorities there handing over the case of the death of
Freddie Gray to the prosecutors early?
So that happened this morning. It was anticipated earlier that would happen on Friday, but it did happen today. We don't know what the contents of the investigation are yet. Now it's going to be up to prosecutors to decide whether any of these 6 police officers who had contact with Freddie Gray that day will face criminal charges. At the same time, the U.S. Department of Justice is conducting a parallel investigation to see whether any civil rights violations occurred.
Well, Victoria, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Victoria Maki of Voice of America reporting live via Skype from Baltimore. Now, for more perspective on the underlying causes behind the increasingly tense situation between the police and citizens in a number of U.S. cities, I'm joined by Melvin Foote, President of Constituency for Africa. Mr. Foote, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Now, there has been a lot of talk around the country regarding what we are witnessing as a clash between citizens and the police. What is really the cause? What is the issue, from your understanding?
Well, the issues are really deep and profound. And, if you really want to talk about it, it goes back to where African Americans first came to the shores of the United States as slaves. And ever since then, the struggle has evolved to where it is today. Is still not where it need be. And so you got civil rights are routinely ignored, and the struggle has gone on. And what we're seeing today, I think the media has played a major role. Now it's cameras everywhere. So we see it. And I think this is the difference between what has been going on for really hundreds of years and what is going on today. There's no real difference. It's a continuation of the struggle.
Yeah. Now, for some, they're looking at a case like that in Baltimore, where the city is a fairly black city. There's a black mayor, an African-American chief of police. Almost half of the policemen are actually of African-American in terms of the composition. Now, tell us, what is the difference in that particular scenario?
Well, I think the way these cities are structured, sure enough, the physical changes are you see today that you didn't see, say, 30, 40, 50 years ago. In Baltimore, you do have a black police chief, a black mayor. But what you don't have is opportunity. And most of these communities are bereft of any kind of economic opportunities. The unemployment is around 50%. You got all kinds of youth who have no hope. And so I think a lot of this is fueled by lack of economic opportunity, a rage of what they're seeing on TV and what they're seeing on social media. And you put that together as combined to create what we're now seeing in Baltimore, but it's a bad situation.
So who really undermines that? Because like in the case of Baltimore, I had some young people say, well, it is a class thing. The people in charge are black like us, but they don't care about us because we're poor.
I have to buy into that. I think, you have a situation where it is a class thing, and you got African Americans who don't themselves identify with the plight of blacks. So that is a true charge. I think it's a class thing. I think that there's poor people who are hopeless. I think some of these poor people are white. I think some of them are Latino. There are other races who also will find themselves alienated from the leadership class. So it's a very complex situation. So
you'd say to resolve this, you have to tackle the issue of economic situation of people.
Yeah, I think that the solution is in education, it's in job creation, it's in training, it's in creating opportunities for people to live a better life.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mel, thank you very much for joining us today. Melvin Foote is the president of Constituency for Africa. Now, the recent unrest in Baltimore follows incidents around the nation in recent months in which police have been accused of misbehavior. As a result of such accusations, both police departments and civil rights groups have called for law enforcers to wear body cameras. But as viewers Greg Flakers tells us, questions remain about the use of the technology.
Houston Chief of Police Charles McClelland supports the use of body cameras, but he says they also present problems.
The type of equipment, the placement of the equipment, the downloading time, storage space, all of those are significant challenges.
For the past 2 years, the Houston Police Department has experimented with cameras, deploying about 100 of them on officers each day. But McClellan says deploying cameras on a few thousand officers and then managing all the video they produce will cost a lot of money.
We'll be paying officers overtime doing their downloading and indexing of these videos.
And those videos can only show a limited perspective on any incident. The body cameras used by police usually offer a wide-angle view of what's in front of the lens, much like these small consumer cameras. Chief McClellan says that view leaves a lot out.
An officer may turn his or her head and see something, but the video camera that's in the middle of their chest is pointing straight ahead.
Most officers who have worn the cameras here and in other cities are very much in favor of them. Rita Watkins, the executive director of the Law Enforcement Management Institute of Texas, says there's statewide demand for body cameras.
I can tell you that right now there are chiefs who are budgeting within their budget and asking their community leadership for the funds to initiate and to start a body camera program.
She says legal experts also are considering how photos and videos taken by average citizens should be handled.
But we've also got the public who's capturing video cameras. And so how do they maintain it, and what's their duty and responsibility for making that information available to law enforcement?
Both she and McClellan are also concerned about what happens if a video file becomes corrupted or disappears.
This technology is man-made, and sometimes man-made objects will malfunction.
He says such a technical glitch could ignite discord in a city like Baltimore, where there already is distrust of the police. He also worries that routine communication between officers and citizens will diminish because of the cameras.
The officer is recording the citizen may be using his or her cell phone to record the officer.
He says body cameras offer benefits, but they also represent a continuing financial burden for police, as cameras become obsolete every few years and must be replaced by newer, better ones. Greg Flakus, VOA News, Houston.
Well, Nigeria's military says it has rescued another group of women and children who had been kidnapped by Boko Haram and were being detained in Sambisa Forest in the northeast. An army spokesman says those rescued have been evacuated to a safety zone for further processing. He did not specify how many they are. Amnesty International says Boko Haram has snatched at least 2,000 women and girls from their families since the start of 2014. But it was the mass kidnapping of more than 200 schoolgirls from a school in Chibok a year ago that caught the world's attention. Earlier this week, the army said it rescued nearly 300 women and girls from the same forest in northeastern Borno state. Now, Burundi has unexpectedly closed its national university in the wake of political protests against the nomination of incumbent President Pierre Nkurunziza to run for a third term. Reports say the university in Bujumbura closed its doors on Thursday and students living in the dormitories were sent home. Meantime, demonstrators took to the streets for a fifth day Thursday, saying the incumbent president's decision to run for a third term is unconstitutional. The Burundi Red Cross reports that 15 protesters were injured in today's clashes between protesters and the police. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, it's an uphill battle in the fight against malaria in Nigeria. We'll tell you why in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu joins us now with a look at antibiotics resistance. Lino.
In a new study, the World Health Organization says an increasing number of infections are no longer treatable because of growing antimicrobial resistance. The WHO study found that no region in the world is prepared to combat this serious global threat, risking the lives of millions of people. Only 25% of the 133 countries have a comprehensive plan to fight resistance to antibiotics and other antimicrobial medicines. The survey also finds public awareness of the issue remains generally low, and many people believe antibiotics are effective against viral infections. It says this leads to antibiotics being used when they are not required or effective, which can lead to resistance. AIDS is taking a toll on the Kingdom of Lesotho. Its combination with poverty has caused a life expectancy to drop, and the impact on the population is getting worse as the country's residents are becoming too sick to work. Observers say the situation is alarming and more needs to be done. Dr. Majaliwa Marwa is program specialist for HIV UNFPA Lesotho.
Lesotho is among the countries with highest prevalence in the world. At 23%, it has the second highest prevalence in the world. And the prevalence is higher even among women. Across all age groups, women have higher HIV prevalence than men in this country. For the last 10 years, according to the Demographic Health Survey, this situation has not changed. Women are more affected due to several reasons, one of it being unequal power relationship, and also beside the biological factors, but women in this country are faced with gender-based violence, are also faced with unemployment, are also faced with unequal power relationship within the households. These are some of the reasons that are structural reasons that are perpetuating the prevalence among women.
And we'll take a closer look at the HIV/AIDS crisis in Lesotho in our next health report. Now, a new study says the likelihood of being bitten by mosquitoes could be down to genes that control our body odor. In the preliminary study published in the medical journal PLOS, scientists from the UK and the US enlisted 19 non-identical and 18 identical pairs of twins in a pilot study, and their odors were submitted to mosquitoes with their hands. Identical twins were more likely to have similar levels of attractiveness as opposed to non-identical twins, where results were more varied, suggesting shared genetics factors were at play. Experts say the intriguing results must now be assessed in larger trials. Now, malaria is a threat for over 90% of Nigeria's 177 million people, and it's the leading cause of child death in the country. While the UN says there has been a sharp decrease in malarial prevalence due to interventions like the mass distribution of insecticide-treated nets, lack of information and poor quality drugs are still pose a major challenge. Caleb Oguche is recovering from malaria, a treatable parasitic disease that kills 600,000 people around the world every year. Most victims are children under age 5 living in the poorest parts of sub-Saharan Africa. UNICEF says over 300,000 Nigerians die from malaria annually. Oguche, a Lagos-based accountant, has been out of work for 3 days receiving treatment.
I think malaria is it's something that happens frequently to persons within this region of the world. And it's actually not a good experience. The feverish nature, one always being weak, and then having to cope with headache.
Malaria is caused by the parasite Plasmodium falciparum, which is spread by mosquitoes. Experts say one of the most challenging features of this parasite is its ability to evolve and overcome anti-malarial drugs. This factor is undermining global work towards eradicating the killer disease. Protection through the various other interventions like use of mosquito nets as well as indoor spraying are vital in stopping the recurrence of the disease even where drugs have worked. Alexander Wamai is a doctor in Lagos.
What you find most times is that the patient comes, you make a diagnosis of malaria, it is confirmed by your laboratory, and then you give a course of anti-malaria drugs. Of course, the patient gets cured, but the patient returns back to her environment where the mosquitoes continue to bite them again. So you expect that in another 2 weeks to 4 weeks, this same patient who was treated will come back again. So the idea is that you must break that chain of regularly getting yourself exposed to mosquitoes.
Nigeria is working to meet the Millennium Development Goal of halting the incidence of malaria and other major diseases by 2015.
Unfortunately, Nigeria is not amongst the 4 countries where malaria has been eliminated, and then we are not amongst the 47 countries that are about to achieve the MDG goals of reducing the burden of malaria by 75% this year. However, I know that there are concerted government efforts to ensure that the post-2015 strategies for eliminating malaria has been adopted fully by the Nigerian government.
Medical experts have long hoped scientists will be able to develop an effective malaria vaccine. The malaria vaccine, RTSS, developed by British drug maker GlaxoSmithKline, is the first to reach the final clinical trial stage. Data shows it offers partial protection to children for up to 4 years. That's our Africa Health Report for today. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, Lenore, thanks a lot, and be sure to watch Lenore Madu's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Now, African countries rank 3rd in the world in palm oil production, behind Asia and South America. As Africa 54's Mel Bailey tells us, the red liquid remained a staple in tasty dishes across the continent.
In the heart of Senegal's Casamance region lies a village known as Kamarakunda. It's here that you'll find some of the best hand-extracted palm oil in the country. The oil comes from palm nut, or a red seed-like fruit that grows in clusters called a regime on palm trees. A villager explains the oil extraction process.
We choose a tree for extraction. I walk underneath the tree to see if the regime is ripe and like a red color. If it's ripe, I will climb the tree, cut down the branches, and then the regime.
The regime is then sold to local villagers for roughly 16 cents, then boiled and pounded to extract the oil.
Our palm oil is prepared with quality pureness. There are a lot of palm oils that are really red in color. It's because it's concentrated. It's like there are artificial additives in it, and that's not good. So ours is natural. That is why we have orders from all over.
Maimuna says the oil has been used in her village to treat hypertension and restore blood loss in new mothers. The oil is used in some staple dishes like konjac, supakanja, and choudoutier. But the process is hard work. After pounding the nuts by hand to extract the fibers, Mai rinses and strains the fibers twice to use the liquid. She then boils that liquid to get her oil. Each bottle sells about $2 per liter.
I think that the future of manual production of palm oil is grim. I don't think that our children will have the strength to fabricate palm oil in the same way. One needs much strength to crack the nuts to extract the oil. I boil them, so it was easier. But if I had not, it would be nearly impossible for them.
Mai uses the profits to send her 5 children to school, an opportunity she says she had to forgo to make palm oil. She hopes that one day she can buy tools like what the local factories use so the production can continue for future generations to come. This is Mel Bailey for Africa 54, Ziguinchor, Senegal.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. A new generation of drones open up a world of possibilities. We'll be right back.
Avril 2015 par le
Commission électorale nationale
We sometimes you take their word with a pinch of salt.
L'hélicoptère va décoller. S'il vous plaît. Mais ici, rien, c'est là. Nous ne voulons pas. Nous ne voulons pas.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. It's a circuit smackdown. Thousands of students gathered in St. Louis, Missouri to compete in a robotics competition known as the First Championship. In this year's Recycle Rush, robots sped around a basketball court-sized field, picking up and stacking crates in designated scoring areas. The event draws a boisterous crowd that organizers estimate at around 40,000 people. Victory in the early rounds before the packed stands sends the winning teams into ecstasy, including this group from Texas. Well, next up, from deserts in Africa to cities in Europe, drone technology is taking off around the globe. At London's SkyTech 2015, all corners of the drone community are showing the latest trends and innovations emerging from the high-flying industry. There is an octocopter that was built with the survey industry in mind. Another model boasts a flight time of between 12 and 22 minutes and an autopilot system. It can carry a range of area imaging technology, including digital cameras, camcorders, and sensors. Yet another company shows off the 3D mapping technology of its expanding fleet, and of course the pictures are breathtaking. And finally, isn't losing an umbrella annoying? Well, by the time you remember where you left it, it's usually too late to track it down. But new technology could be about to change that, with Croatia experiencing some particularly wet seasons in the past couple of years. A group of young people decided to get into the umbrella business. The umbrellas have a Bluetooth chip inside tied to a smartphone application, which alerts the user when they are separated and shows the forgetful owner exactly where it is. A safe location like home or office can be set up to pause the alerts, or there is a snooze button if you deliberately leave your favorite umbrella somewhere like a cloakroom. And that is what is trending today. Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and from all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to Voice of America's News Words, where we teach you about words in the news.
When the George W. Bush Presidential Library opened in Texas, all of the living U.S. presidents, past and present, gathered for the ceremony.
One of the things that the Presidential Library's opening demonstrates, in many ways, is an end to the administration. This is really the last thing that he's going to do as president of this administration, of this group of people.
The word presidential means having to do with a president. Presidential libraries hold the official papers from a president's administration.
Presidential elections are when voters choose a president, often a nation's top public official. Now, when you hear the word presidential,
your English will be good enough to know what this news word means.